backs of our heads, probably. Yeah.
Welcome. Call this meeting to order. Just like school here, we're all in our school desks here all ready to go, but thank you for all arriving on time and being ready to work. I want to welcome you all to the first of two very important days in the selection of the next Fargo Police Chief. We appreciate the time and energy you have already invested in your individual reviews and ratings of the police chief applicants. Your individual ratings were compiled to determine which of the applicants would advance to the first round interview. In just a few minutes, we will move into executive session in order to be able to discuss confidential applications with our candidates. You will then determine which applicants will advance to the next phase of the selection process. Now, you may have met in the forum that there was concern related to the information I provided in response to a media question related to naming an interim police chief. To ensure continuing continuity of operations, I, along with the city administrative team, was responsible for selecting an interim police chief. As hiring managers, the team possessed information for the purposes necessary to select interim chief. This information was independent of the confidential information provided to all of us in the full selection committee. To remain impartially of all candidates applying for the permanent position, both internal and external, Chief Deputy Ross Renner was recommended as interim chief. Renner is not a candidate for permanent chief. This ensured Fargo PD would be led successfully until the permanent chief is hired. The information being used for the selection committee for a chief of police is the sole purpose for selecting a permanent chief. It is important to distinguish my role as a hiring manager for the position of interim chief as my role as member of this selection committee. You all have the minutes from the July 16th Fargo Police Chief Selection Committee kickoff meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 16th kickoff meeting? So, Dave Leaker, so moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave Pipkern. Any discussion or corrections of those minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are now going to enter into the executive session. I would now invite Assistant City Attorney Nancy Morris to give a brief explanation of North Dakota law which allows executive session to take place. Nancy?
Thank you, Mayor. The executive session is a term used for a closed meeting of a public entity that is otherwise subject to the open meeting and open records laws of the state of North Dakota. An executive session or closed meeting is a legally recognized exception to the open meeting requirements and may be held under certain conditions and situations as permitted by law. North Dakota Century Code Section 4404 19.2, entitled Confidential or Closed Meetings, specifically states that a governing body may hold an executive session to consider or discuss closed or confidential records. This statute outlines how an executive session is to occur. The notice of this meeting contained a notice of executive session for a proper legal purpose. As you know, the applications for the police chief position are confidential records. In point of fact, North Dakota Century Code Section 4404 18.27, entitled Applications for Public Employment, specifically provides for the ability of the public body or other person reviewing applications on behalf of the public entity, which this police selection committee constitutes, is appointed by the city commission, is authorized to hold an executive session to discuss those confidential applications. Because the applications for the police chief are confidential, the law provides for the police chief selection committee to meet in a closed session to discuss such confidential records.
Thank you. And Nancy, just as we go forward, we get the last round where we have 3 to 4 candidates. Will that be closed as well?
When the 3 finalists are named, those will be open
To the public as well?
That's correct.
Okay. So, Dave, do you want to make the motion? You always love those motions.
I'll make the motion unless.
Oh, I'm
someone
sorry, you don't have the executive. Nancy, could you repeat the motion for the executive session, please? Or maybe do I have it?
You do have it. Mayor, but I can see if I
Well,
can
the move
find
is for the
something.
Police Selection Committee to retire in executive session to discuss confidential applications for public employment with individual candidates selected for virtual interviews, as provided by North Dakota Century Code 4404-1827, in accordance with the North Dakota Century Code 4404-1902. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Dave Leake for the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll go in executive session. At this time, we'll exit the commission chambers for 5-minute recess so so HR can set out our booklets and set the confidential information up at each one of your desks, and then we'll come back in and reconvene. Thank you.